Welcome to It's a Woman's World, a show which looks at any and all topics under the sun from a woman's point of view. Hosted by Ali Naifani. Here's Ali.
Welcome to the show, and I'd like to start by introducing my co-hosts. I have a table full of co-hosts today, so welcome to all of you. And let's start by saying hello to Kristy Blick. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Naava Johnson.
Hi.
And Umajaga. Hello to all of you. And I'd like to also introduce our guests. Today we have with us Jackie Molly. She is the CEO of the Minnesota Lions iBank. Welcome, Jackie. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Wow. So what exactly do you mean by a Minnesota Lions iBank?
Great question. An iBank is an organization that recovers human eye tissue and then processes it and distributes it for transplant and research. So that's what an iBank does. Similar to organ and tissue donation, but specifically for eyes.
Is this a common, is this something that, there's a big need for?
There is. There's a tremendous need for eye donation, both for transplant and for research. Our iBank in Minnesota was founded back in 1960 with the Minnesota Lions and the University of Minnesota, and we distribute somewhere between 1,200 and 1,400 corneas for transplant a year, and well over 2,000 eye tissues for research and medical education.
Oh, so do you use all the cornea that you get for transplantation, or how do you segment it?
Is as much as possible. The families must support eye donation in order for it to happen for both transplant and research. And if a family is supportive of the research and medical education, then we will use any and all parts of the eye and the cornea for transplant and research that are eligible.
So how can someone donate their eyes, and what are the qualifications?
Very good question.
Yeah.
A good start would be to tell your family, your friends, what your wishes are, and then to make it known. So putting it on your driver's license, in a healthcare directive. Those are all very good indications to let your family know if you want to be an eye donor. And then the criteria is actually broader than most other types of donation. More people can be eye donors most often than organ or tissue. But it's always changing. So we tell folks, don't rule yourself out for being a potential eye donor for transplant or research, because the criteria changes literally every year.
Oh.
Yeah, Naava, I think that's a great question, because I think that might be a difficult question to have to deal with, right? So as you check that box on that driver's license form, but tell us, Jackie, though, how does that change lives when people donate? Can you just give us some quick examples of what does that mean if you can get the difference in someone's life if they can get this type of transplant?
Yeah, so making it real for people. A cornea transplant really is life-changing for many people who receive a cornea, the gift, of a cornea. An example is there have been people in Minnesota or around the country that literally haven't seen a grandchild or someone in their family until after they received a cornea transplant, and then they were able to see, literally, again, and drive, read, see their loved ones, people around them, get around the world. This is very interesting. A study was just done by the Eye Bank Association of America this year, which demonstrated that the socioeconomic benefit of a cornea transplant was estimated to be, just in the year 2013, at $6 billion, which I was blown away by. I had no idea that the financial impact, I guess, on our society was that big in the United States alone. The research side of it is always very important as well, and that transforms lives and impacts people by hopefully producing new cures, treatments, ways that people can be helped. People who are living with either glaucoma, there's a rare disease called retinitis pigmentosa, things like that impact people where either they lose their vision or they lose clarity of vision. And so we hope that through research, these new cures and treatments come about.
Okay, so when a person makes donation, how much time you should use it for transplantation?
Yeah, that's quick. Eye donation and cornea transplantation has to happen within 2 weeks, but most cornea surgeons want the tissue to be transplanted within 5 to 7 days of the death. So we're talking with families about the option of eye donation within hours of someone's death. And so that is something that it's important for all of us to realize that conversation is going to happen very quickly after someone dies.
So speaking of the families, is there a way for the families to know the benefit that, because obviously that's a hard decision to make and something hard to do, to know the benefit and what's happened with other people's lives because of this donation?
Yeah, if someone becomes an eye donor, then families can certainly reach out to the eye bank. We do send a letter automatically letting the family know, or the legal next of kin. We let that one person know what the outcome was with the eye donation. I'm sure every eye bank handles that differently. We also have a celebration twice a year where donor families are welcome to come and hear about the benefits of eye donation. They hear from a researcher, a donor family, a cornea recipient, and sometimes a surgeon at those events.
This I can totally relate to, because my daughter, elder daughter, just got recently cornea transplant because of the contact lenses. Her whole right eye got blind. Just the contact lenses just damaged her cornea. And so we had to do a cornea transplant. So when we asked for them, for cornea, they said they have to wait for 3-4 months. So I don't know. That's why I asked you the question: how much time, to typically?
Oh, I think I misunderstood your question. I was thinking of it from the other side. Most cornea transplants, from the waiting for the recipient side of it.
Okay.
Most cornea transplants are scheduled now. So years ago, it was like organ transplantation, where people literally did have to wear a pager and come in at the last minute to receive a cornea. But in the last 20 years or so, maybe 15, cornea transplants are now scheduled. So, and sometimes it is weeks or months out to schedule a transplant, because it still is a gift from someone who has died, and you don't know when when that's going to happen. But
I truly appreciate those people who are ready, willing to donate their organ.
It's inspiring.
It's very inspiring.
Yeah,
totally. I can relate to that.
You had a very personal experience with
very
that.
Personal. My elder daughter, last year, whole year we went through that, because suddenly, it's just one day, it happened in a matter of an hour. She was just screaming with pain, because of the contact lenses.
Really painful.
Just painful like anything. Even the doctor said, nobody can bear that pain. I don't know how your daughter is able to bear that. She's such a young girl. She's just 15, That was so, I can relate to that. That's why I truly appreciate, what you're doing. So
thank you for sharing that story. That's
I
a
know.
very personal, real example that is not uncommon necessarily, that
because there are so many risks associated with it too. We don't know whether we'll get the right one. Even if you get the right one, whether the eye will heal properly. You know what I mean?
Is it difficult to get a tissue match for a cornea?
They actually don't have to match corneas by blood type, or there's different types of cornea surgeries now, which I could talk about. It's interesting. But they don't have to match by blood type. They do just match to the type of surgery. So the cornea, the characteristics and qualities of the cornea just must match whatever the surgeon's going to use it for in the surgery. So for example, in short, if they're going to transplant the full cornea, the full thickness all the way through, then those tissues need to meet different criteria than if they're going to just transplant certain layers, which they've just started doing like in the last 5 years. It's quite revolutionary in the field of cornea transplantation, where they don't necessarily transplant the entire cornea anymore.
Wow. What age range is the corneal transplant most common? So older,
very good question.
younger?
Yep, over the age of 60. I can't be quite more specific than that. But there are some conditions that babies are born with that they need a transplant immediately. Peter's anomaly is one of them, where if they don't receive a transplant within a few days or weeks of birth, then their brain won't recognize the visual signals, and they have a pretty strong chance of not regaining sight as they could if they receive a transplant right away.
So timing makes a difference.
Timing makes a Big difference, yes. And then there are some other conditions that people are either born with or that can develop over time. Keratoconus is a very common disease that requires a cornea transplant for many people who have keratoconus, and that condition is where the cornea becomes very pointed and thin on the outer layer of the cornea, and the risk of not having a transplant when it becomes very thin like that is it can burst, and literally your eye won't be retained in its shape and you'll lose all function of the eye. So are there pretty good outcome? Is there a percentage of good outcome for people after a cornea transplant? Yeah, great question. Cornea transplantation is one of the most successful types of transplant. They estimate, what I always hear and still hear, is over 95% of cornea transplants are successful. There is some risk of rejection, but they don't have the same risk of rejection as many other types of transplant, because there is not a direct blood supply to the cornea the way that our organs and skin and other tissues have. So
Very interesting.
So if someone wanted to be a donor, is there any cost for the donor?
No,
the family?
there absolutely should not be.
Okay.
No. And that would be true, to my knowledge, of organ tissue and eye donation. There should be no cost to the family.
Okay. Can anyone with a disease or something too can donate, or is there any specific person that should be healthy, or is there any other condition to be a donor?
Yes, there is criteria to be a donor. Right now, for eye donation, for our eye bank, we generally have an age criteria of 3 or 5 years old is the younger side, and up to 75, the upper age limit for transplant. Sometimes we are looking, though, for stem cells, the ocular stem cells, and we need younger tissue occasionally for that. And for research, those projects are variable, so they can be outside that age range.
Are you doing research at your eye bank?
Our eye bank is heavily involved in research. I'm really proud to say that our eye bank is one of the few eye banks in the country that focuses on research, and I would say that's because we're part of the University of Minnesota, and the Minnesota Lions support us strongly still, and they're very focused on research, so they help keep us focused on research. So we provide tissue to U of M researchers, Mayo Clinic researchers, and other folks for glaucoma, retinal problems, all sorts of different research,
What about the families that, after they know their loved one's cornea has been transplanted, what's it like for them? Is that a
very individual, personal experience. We hear all sorts of different reactions. From someone mentioned here earlier during the conversation that it can be difficult. I've heard some families say, easiest decision that we had to make during the time surrounding before or after the death. We often hear families say that it's a positive and empowering decision that they're able to be part of. And it's good, I think, for them to have an opportunity to share stories about their loved one. And they, of course, like to hear the outcome often. Not always, and that's their choice as well. If they tell us while we're talking with them to do the medical social history on the person who died to see if the corneal tissue is suitable for transplant, sometimes they'll say, we don't want to know the outcome, and that's okay. If they don't want to know, we
very
make it
individualized.
very individual. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Do you also have a website you can
We
tell us
do.
about?
Yep. www.mnlionseyebank.org.
Wonderful.
Yep. So people can go there for more information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Nice to meet you, Jackie. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
being here.
Ollie.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.